Hello, everyone. My name is Rebecca Morton. My pronouns are she, her. I'm the artist and studio manager here at Baltimore Clayworks, and we are thrilled that you all have joined us. I would like to acknowledge that I am joining from my office located in Piscataway and Susquehannock Land, currently known as Baltimore, Maryland. It is my pleasure to welcome you to our virtual artist talk given today by Ali Saunders. Ali Saunders is a ceramic artist from Boerne, Texas, who makes functional pottery using pattern and color. She received her Bachelor's of Arts from the University of St. Thomas and her Master's of Fine Arts from Louisiana State University. After graduating from the University of St. Thomas, she was a resident at Flower City Art Center in Rochester, New York. Most recently, she has been the Salad Days resident at Watershed Center for Ceramic Arts, where she made 450 plates to be a part of the Salad Days event in July 2023. Saunders is inspired by the growth and abundance in nature and makes work that connects to legacy of female makers in her family. Ali will be teaching a 2-day workshop September 21st and 22nd, and there is only one spot left, so register soon if you're interested. For more information about our artist talks, please visit our virtual library at baltimoreclayworks.org. And I will now turn it over to Ali.
So my name is Ali Saunders, and like Rebecca said, I'm a ceramic artist from Boerne, Texas. Boerne, when I grew up, was a small town just north of San Antonio, and now it's basically a suburb. So this is just a picture of the Riverwalk, which is one of San Antonio's most memorable parts. I make ceramic objects characterized by floral pattern and their potential for use. I make work that is functional and designed to be used in the home. I also think the way that something looks is an integral part of function, and I seek to make objects that function well. The surface of my pottery is rich with floral images, and I hope that these images draw on the user and also highlight flowers and how important they are for the preservation of the natural world. My work also functions as a surrogate for the things that I value but sometimes lack, like directness, connectivity, and social acuity. I hope that by making ceramics, I can correct some of these faults and also provide an avenue to make connections by creating work that reveals myself. So growing up, I didn't do a ton of art. In high school, I was really focused on attending a prestigious college and tried to do a lot of activities that would help with that. I was required to take one art class or one semester long art class, and this was really my only exposure to art. I did get accepted to a prestigious college and attended this university, and it was a struggle. I started off as a biomedical engineering major, and then switched to political science and overall felt very lost. I had trouble finding something that I had enough interest in that I wanted to devote my whole life to. So in the senior year, in the fall of my senior year of college, I withdrew from college because I just couldn't figure out what I wanted to do. And it seemed like all my peers were applying to med school or law school or going to job fairs, and I felt really lost. So at this time, I was fairly depressed. I was disinterested and lonely. And I had a friend ask me to take a class with her at a community arts center. A ceramics class at a community arts center, and I was hooked immediately. I had a great teacher. I loved working with clay, and I really liked the connection to the community there. It made me feel connected in a way I hadn't for a long time. So after working there for a while, I eventually went back to undergrad at the University of St. Thomas in Houston, Texas, and got a BA in studio art with a concentration in ceramics. And at this time, I worked as a studio manager and instructor at a makerspace in Houston called TXRX Labs. And so I worked there for about 1.5 years, and then decided that I really wanted to focus more on my ceramics and make more time to make work. So I applied to residencies and was accepted to be a resident at Flower City Art Center in Rochester, New York. This is an image of Flower City Art Center. It actually has a great history. It used to be a fire station, and where the ceramic studios are, kind of in the back of the building, was actually used to be the barn where the horses used to live when it functioned as a fire station. When I got to Flower City Art Center, I was thinking about making incremental change, and really kind of honing what I was doing rather than trying something new. And these are some of the pots that I was making. So these are cone 6 porcelain, and the black lines are all inlaid. So those were all carved into the clay. And then I put a black slip on top and wiped it away, and the black coloring just stayed in the cracks. And then the gray color, or there's some other colors in subsequent slides, is a glaze that was applied. So here's a vase and a pitcher. This is a teapot. Something new at the time was adding these little red dots in just to add a little bit more color to the work. Here's a serving bowl. This is like a wine carafe and some cups to go with it. And here's a set of jars and a set of tea bowls. A couple of mugs, some tumblers, some more tumblers. I like tumblers. Just some smaller cups and some more smaller cups, and then some plates. This set of work that you just saw is the work that I produced during my undergrad, and then also at the beginning of the residency at Flower City Art Center in Rochester. This is the work that I applied to graduate school with, and the work that I had been making for quite a while. And while I was at Flower City Art Center, about halfway through the residency was 4 years, so this was about 6 months in, I had a critique with Peter Pincus. And I had just gotten accepted to graduate school, and I was really excited about it. And he saw my work and he said, I'm not sure, well, I don't want to misquote him, but what I heard him say was, I'm not sure that you should go to graduate school if you don't want to focus on making new work. Because up until this point, I had been making pretty similar work to the work I started with at the residency. And I kind of took this as a challenge to make big changes and try new things. So I just tried a whole bunch of different ways to decorate work in the studio. And after some experimentation, I came up with a new body of work that is what was in my exit exhibition. The title of the exhibition was Lemon Boom, and it was a co-exhibition with my fellow resident, Kelly Clements. We actually came up with the name for the exhibition by everyone in the studio putting a word on a piece of paper, and we put it into a hat and drew 2 words out, and we came up with Lemon Boom. So this new work is more about layering. There's a pattern underneath, and then glaze is applied also in a patterned way. And color plays a bigger role in this work. So I'm gonna go through some images that were in this exit show. So vases on the top, a couple of viewers, and some covered bowls. This is just a close-up of that same shot. This bowl in the front has to have lemons in it because the show's titled Lemon Boom, so that's what that is. And then these are all the cups that were in the show. So close up. This is a good image to look at. If you look at the cup on the far right, you can kind of see what you see when you have the cup close up, which is underneath. There's a pattern that's like a white on white that's done in the green stage, and then it's glazed with colored glazes later on. Some pouring pots. Some plates. a large covered bowl and some bowls to go with it. And I want to, because this is a continuous theme that I've found working in ceramic studios, and it makes sense mentioning it at the show that I had in Flower City Art Center, was just how great the community was there and how much I felt a sense of belonging and felt supported by everyone there. And I found that that tends to happen in ceramic communities. So I attended graduate school at Louisiana State University after I was in Rochester. I think the two most important things that I got from LSU was this sense of community. And it's also where I learned why I make the work that I make. When I was in LSU in my first semester, as part of my assistantship, I was assigned to work in the wood shop. And the wood shop was where the laser cutters were kept. And so I started laser cutting stencils that I use in my work there and that I still use in my work. And so that was kind of a coincidence that's been very important. While I was at LSU, I continued using floral and geometric patterns, and LSU was really a chance to try and fail. I made several kind of subpar bodies of work, but elements from each of them kind of came together for the work that I had in my thesis show. So this slide here, this is what I had for my very first critique at graduate school. So this is my studio. And then these are all different coffee pots that I made. So here I was focusing on form as well. And then I have just kind of a couple of plates that I'm showing. These were when I was first starting to use the laser cut stencils. So here's a plate, and then here's another plate. Something that's also important is that I started using hump molds to make plates and platters instead of relying exclusively on the wheel. So these couple of plates here were hand built. And then these are some wall tiles that I experimented with in graduate school. Again, the circles with the, I don't know what to call those, I guess the ovals taken out of them are also laser cut stencils. This is some plates that I made in graduate school, and this was an important way of working for me. The face of the plates was put on a hump mold, but that thick rim that you see around the plates was actually a coil that was thrown on the wheel. And I used a process called sledging, where I took like a credit card that I had cut a shape out that I wanted and pressed it into the clay. And that created the shape of the rim that I then slipped and scored and added on. So the next images are images from my thesis show at LSU. I have a lot to say about the thesis show, so what I'm going to do is scroll through the images, and then I'll talk more about them after I get to the end. So the title of my show was Growth Lines, and that name came from watching the laser cutter cut all the lines out of the flowers and leaves that I was making. This is a set of jars. This is kind of like a big shot, and I have another two. So there's a flower brick on the left, some pictures, and then some bigger wall works. All those bigger wall works use that technique of the sledged rim that's made on the wheel. This is just a close-up of those first jars. Here's a different set of jars. These are some serving bowls. Some tumblers. Some mugs and some cups. These are as a closer shot of these wall works. And I think I have, yeah, some even closer shots. You got to have mugs if you're a potter. So here's some mugs that were in the show. This is a set of pots. I'm going to talk about sets directly in a second, but I'm interested in making sets of pots and looking at how the way pots that are set next to each other fill the negative space, and how pots interact with each other in sets. So here's another set that looks at that same idea. These are all coffee pots that continued interest in coffee pots that started with my first critique, continued on through my whole time in graduate school. And I still, coffee pots are one of my favorite things to make. Here's a close-up of one. And this is another set. So I want to talk a little bit more about the exhibition. All the clay used in this is low fire red earthenware. When I was using this clay, I was interested in its long history, and also the history of decorated ceramics using red clays. So this includes Italian maiolica and Dutch delftware. And the way that those historical ceramics were made is a little bit different, but it's still the idea of putting color over top of a red clay. I had some kind of like big influence in this sort of decorated red clay. One is Adara Willard. I took a workshop from Adara Willard, like a 2 to 3 day workshop, after I'd been working in clay for about a year. And at that point, I hadn't decorated any of my ceramics. And after her workshop, I started decorating. So she's really influential. And also a Holly Walker, and a Yumi Orie. So these parts are all made by applying layers of slip to clay. Layers are part of my experience of the world and play a huge role in my pottery. Both visually and mentally, I encounter complex, multidimensional stories that resonate with my life. For me, these stories are found within objects. Objects serve as a way to transmit a narrative through touch and observation. I seek to express layered stories within my pottery. I grew up in a home that was filled with decorated textiles, and the way that I hold these in my mind is as an expansion of memories, snapshots that are layered in my mind and connect to the depiction of image and pattern created with layers of color that tell about the ways decorated objects can make life richer and the ways that makers of objects can transmit love and comfort. So for me, this comes out in these memories I have of a mother and a grandmother, both always making something, you know, always had work in their hand when we were sitting at the couch or at the sewing machine. And so always making these decorated fiber objects. Growing up, my home was sometimes filled with discord, and these objects I looked to for reassurance and also confirmation that there was a better side to life, that angry individuals could also make and understand beauty. As an observer to conflict, I found comfort in the pillows on the couch or the quilt on the bed. And objects gave a sense of safety. And I seek to create the same sense of comfort in my own work. Color is also really key to my work. Color, I think, is hard to think about and talk about. There's this established, intellectualized way to talk about color that I find challenging to master. For me, a lot of my color decisions are just made through guess and check. And I also make work that explore color families. So for instance, for me, like the red family is pink and orange and maroon. And these all fall in the same family, but have enough variation to be different and visually interesting. And I think this idea of color families relates to the landscape of Central Texas, where I'm from, where often things are related shades of brown and green. And the exceptions to these are rare but captivating. I replicate this in my own work by using colors within the same family and sometimes adding another color that is more vibrant. And I think that these brighter colors give signs of abundance, life, and growth. I make pots that are loud in a way, which is a little bit different from my personality, which is much quieter. They're an expression of a part of me that I usually hide. And then I think that the loudness of the color is also balanced by softer floral shapes. I think that everyone has an introverted and an extroverted part of themselves, and I express my extroverted part through colorful patterns. Like I mentioned earlier, I like to create work that are sets, and I like to create work in series. There's something really comfortable about throwing series and the memory of thrown objects. It kind of allows you to get the form in your hand and trust it and just repeat that process, and it's very soothing. I make groupings of pots according to function, profile, and decoration. Series highlight a specific form and offer opportunities for interaction between objects. And then something that I'm really interested in and was especially interested in graduate school are garnitures. Garnitures are groups of decorative pots that were popular during the 17th and 18th centuries. They're typically found on mantelpieces or atop cabinets, and they're generally porcelain pots with cobalt blue decoration. And these are really interesting in the ways that negative space plays a role when displaying pots and grouping and how pots interact with their neighboring pot. If you go into an art museum, so oftentimes you'll find like a room of paintings and then there'll be a cabinet against the wall. And if you look up on top of the cabinet, they often have pots that are garnitures there. Flowers are also really important in my work. When I just sketch or doodle or don't think about what I'm doing, I find my hands naturally inclined to draw floral lines. I think this embedded floral decoration comes from growing up around floral textiles created by my mother and grandmother. And like I said before, I find flowers soothing and as a source of comfort. Without thinking, I am predisposed to flowers, but with thinking, I consider the lifetime of a flower and the role that pollinators and flowers play in the continuation of plant species. And then I just wanted to talk a little bit about function. I see visual appearance as a part of function. I think that we're first drawn to a mug by its appearance, and then we pick it up and feel the rim and test the handle. So it's kind of this visual appearance that draws us in and leads us to investigate the other parts of the object. And then it's the content of that object that keeps the user engaged. The surface generates an attraction, but is the function that continues the relationship. I want to make pots that people notice from across a room and are attracted to, and I'm also interested in how they are used. I see surface as an entry point, a vehicle to draw the user to investigate further. While appearance might lead to the first part of contact, it is also essential that the object function well. Objects that function well relationship between objects. So I wanted to talk a little bit about my decorating pattern and color is applied in the green stage. This allows me to simplify the decorating process and minimize the complications of glazing. The slip I use is colored with mason stains, which remain relatively true to color throughout the firing process, which allows me to experience color directly in the studio. And then I apply a clear glaze at what temperature I'm firing to. So for me, that's either low fire cone 04 or mid fire, so cone 6. And so I use stencils, and I'm going to show this image, which is a laser cutter cutting out a stencil. I'll show a video of it in a second. But stencils are tools used to create pattern or shape. For me in ceramics, these are a piece of paper, specifically newsprint, that are cut, they're dipped in water and applied to the pot, and then they function as a kind of resist. All of these shapes are drawn in Adobe Illustrator and then cut with a laser cutter. And so this video on your screen is a laser cutter actually cutting floral shapes out. And so I layer the paper so it's like 8 sheets thick and I can cut a whole bunch out at once. And then the way that my process works is that there are layers of color and layers of stencils. So I start by applying one solid layer of slip, and then I put a layer of stencils on, and then I apply another layer of slip, and then I put more stencils on, and then I apply another layer of slip and put more stencils on, and then finish with a final layer of slip. So this is a video of me removing the stencils from the cup after they've had all the layers of slip applied. And it's obviously sped up a lot. And then I'll just talk a little bit about my forming process. I make vertical forms on the wheel. And for me, the wheel is all about movements, a series of fluid and confident movements. I apply force and lead the clay into the envisioned shape. This is a relatively quick process. The focus is on efficiency and keeping the clay strong. The wheel was the first tool that I learned in ceramics. And I see it as a negotiation process, a partnership between me and the wheel. Working together, the wheel becomes an extension of me, and my motions direct the clay to a shared goal. In graduate school, I started doing some hand building, like the work I showed for plates and platters. And those are all on hump molds, and hump mold is a plaster formed into a convex curve. The mold forms the face of the object, and then I add a coil to create a foot. And then like those plates I showed or the platters that were in the exhibition, I sometimes add a rim. And this is a sledged rim where I use the wheel and apply a plastic model to a coil and press the shape into the clay. Okay, so after graduate school, I moved to Newcastle, Maine to be the Salad Days resident at Watershed Center for the Ceramic Arts. I would say this is kind of a potter's dream, get to move to rural Maine and make, I think I ended up making more around 500 plates. This is me working in the studio there. They actually, I think a year or two before I arrived there, they had just rebuilt their studio. So they have a beautiful new studio there. This was a little bit of a struggle at first, working with new clay and slips and figuring out a process that would work for making 500 plates. So I started by making plates the same way that I had in graduate school. These have that rim added. And this is just me going through removing stencils. And the way that this works is I have all these layers of stencils and then I take them off. And then I'll show you in the next slide a video of the final step, which is I add a stencil back to the plate after these ones have been removed and add a layer of white, which is the final layer. And so this is me adding that white slip. That's the final layer. And then I peel those off and you have the finished product. And then here are some of those plates finished.
Plate preview.
Oh, sorry, I didn't mean for that sound to be there. Okay. And so at about the point of making this video, I started to realize that adding that rim really took a lot of time. And I started thinking about ways to be more efficient and about making plates without the rim. It also felt to me like if I was going to be making different plates that I wanted to use different patterns. So I developed some new patterns to use in the work. And these are in the green state. They haven't been fired yet. But those are some of the new plates. So these have no rim, and I'm starting to use some more geometric elements too. And at this point, I basically counted up the days I had left and figured out how many plates I needed to make each day. And then I would make that many plates each day. This was great in terms of experimentation. I got some advice from a former Salad Days artist before I went to Maine, not to make the same plate 500 times, but to use each one as an experiment and develop new work while you were there. So I developed new patterns, and then here's just a couple images of some plates from there. And then these are images of the actual Salad Days event. So these are all the plates laid out. Some more plates. And I think this is a video kind of showing the plates. And here's a video. This is the actual day of the event when there are people there. So they just kind of like walk around and figure out which plate they want, and then they take that one and use it to eat the meal off of. Yeah, I don't think I explained that, but I should have. So if you're not familiar with the Salad Days event, it's Watershed's big fundraiser. And it's kind of like Empty Bowls or one of those events, but it's Salad Days instead. So you pay for a ticket to Salad Days and you get to pick out a plate and you keep that plate. And then in theory, they have salads that you eat off of the plate. I think that they've since COVID, haven't been using the plates as much, but have put like a paper plate on top. But anyways, that's what Salad Days is. So all of these plates that are out, all of them ended up getting purchased by someone. And so I think one of the most informative things I got from this process was talking to people and watching people and seeing the plate that they picked. And everyone preferred the plates that I had made that had multiple patterns on them. I didn't make as many of those because they essentially take twice as long to make, right? Because there's 2 separate patterned areas or 3 separate patterned areas. But that was really useful feedback for me because I wanted to start figuring out how to make cylindrical forms with multiple patterns. And this is something that I'm still working on and I plan to focus on while doing this residency here at Baltimore Clayworks. And I'm interested now in ways of making pattern with stencils like I've been doing, but also with texture and also with like inlay or mishima, like that earlier work I made as an undergraduate. And so this introduces ways of dividing up forms and how to create multiple patterns on the same pot. These are some plates I made for a show that I was asked to be part of, but I think they look nice together. So these are some plates with multiple patterns on them. So the summer after being in Maine, I made these 2 jars, and these are really significant for me. The way that they're made is I I added a coil to the point where the pot changes direction. And then I added another coil to the rim and then cut it away. And so these create these really exaggerated rim or exaggerated parts in the pot. And this is something else that I'm working on, seeking to incorporate into work and kind of manipulate forms and work with forms in a new way. So I also, last year from August to May, so I think it was 9 months, I did a residency at Armory Arts Center in West Palm Beach, Florida. And there I started working on some of these ideas, these new jars, and then also multiple patterns. These are some jars that I made while I was there. I'm using a red stoneware, a red cone 6 clay. And then these are all stencils. And then there's a little bit of kind of like variation in pattern. There's that kind of tall rim, and then the circles that are carved out make a pattern. These are close-up shots of some of those. This is like a jug and a teapot. Again, using these two patterns. A lot of the work that I made here at this residency is flowers and dots. And that's something I want to work on here, is expanding kind of the pattern library and using different patterns. But this was kind of like a starting place. These are just, these are all mugs, and these are just a single pattern, a single flower pattern. And then these are some tumblers that have the dots and then the floral pattern. These are different, these mugs are porcelain, and then so are these tumblers. And then these are some tea bowls, and these have that floral pattern on the top, and then there's a texture pattern on the bottom. These are just some wall pieces. And this is a coffee pot and some cups to go with it. And then I think this is the last image in my presentation. These jars have that tall rim, and then I've cut or pierced into them. So